Freedom Watch Chairman Larry Klayman is on the telephone from Washington, D.C. Larry, welcome back to True News. Is there a smoking gun that proves President Trump's assertion that he was spied upon by U.S. intelligence agencies?
Well, I don't know if there's the smoking gun. There are a number of smoking guns, and those are in the hands of the FBI right now because our whistleblower, my client, Dennis Montgomery, came forward about 2 years ago under grant of immunity and provided 47 hard drives and 600 million plus pages of information showing the prominent Americans, including Mr. Trump, were surveyed. Now, I also understand there's new information which the House Intelligence Committee may have, which has been made reference to by Chairman Devin Nunes and others, and there are other sources out there, apparently, that have even more smoking guns to add on top of that. And there's no question that the NSA, the CIA, and our intelligence agencies, through the Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, someone who lied under oath to Congress when he was asked by Senator Wyden whether or not there was mass surveillance on Americans, former CIA Director John Brennan, who was a very ethically compromised individual, very pro-Obama. You could see what he was doing at the end of the campaign last year in trying to destroy President-elect Trump. These people are all involved in a massive scandal. And the question remains, will the intelligence committees who oversee these intelligence agencies, who probably knew to some extent of what was going on, will they, like the FBI, because the FBI has sat on Montgomery's information for 2 years, will they cover this up? And I believe that it's going to take people like yourself and others to demand with the American public that we get the truth here, because it's all a giant intelligence cabal here in Washington. And they're all implicated in some way. And it's only when their ox is gored that they do anything. You know, Nunes is doing it because Trump's ox was gored, and that's good. And the Democrats are doing it through Adam Schiff because they feel that Hillary Clinton's ox was gored. Frankly, I could care less about Hillary Clinton's ox being gored. But the reality is that there is this cover-up here in Washington, and the American people are going to have to demand the answers because we'll never know if we're getting the truth. And I've been trying to do it the right way. I've never seen any of this classified information. The FBI has it. And you have to ask yourself the question, were they so happy to give Mr. Montgomery immunity to produce all of this because they wanted to take it off the market and make sure no one would ever see it? Because Comey is really not cooperating, from what I see, with the House Intelligence Committee. He's willing to investigate so-called Russian connections, but he wouldn't say whether he would investigate the leaks, which have destroyed General Michael Flynn and, are about to destroy other people in and around the Trump team.
Tell us more about your client, Mr. Montgomery. Was he an employee of U.S. intelligence agencies or a contractor?
You can read more about it on our website at freedomwatchusa.org, freedomwatchusa.org. We hope people will go there and support us because we're up against some very valuable forces here, very formidable forces, rather. Montgomery was a contractor. He was not an employee. And he worked with a company called Intrepid. After 9/11, they had learned that he developed this facial recognition software for the gambling casinos in Las Vegas. And the NSA, CIA, and FBI went out to Las Vegas and entered into a contract with Intrepid. And Dennis Montgomery worked very closely with the heads of the National Security Agency, Central Intelligence Agency, and the Director of National Intelligence in developing software which could disencrypt the messages that were being shown by Al Jazeera of bin Laden, where he was sending, once you took the encryption off, sending messages to his troops to commit further terrorist acts. So Mr. Montgomery became the franchise, in a way, of the intelligence agencies, very valuable individual who created software that could help fight terrorism. And in that context, I might add, he worked with James Clapper and John Brennan and others and saw what they were doing in terms of this illegal surveillance of prominent Americans. Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, other justices, 156 judges, prominent businessmen like Mr. Trump, even yours truly. They got my banking records back in 2007 when I lived in Miami, and a number of people who are advocates or considered to be adversaries of a particular administration or prominent. They were harvesting that information, presumably to use for nefarious purposes.
And Mr. Montgomery presented his evidence to the FBI 2 years ago. Is that correct?
That's correct. And he also, not only did he turn over all of his hard drives and information, much of which is classified, he also testified. He was interviewed under oath at FBI field office headquarters in District of Columbia in a secure, soundproof room. It was videotaped for about 3 hours. The FBI has this in its files. So we've asked the intelligence committees, and I urge the listeners to contact Chairman Nunes of the House Intelligence Committee, Senator Richard Burr of the Senate Intelligence Committee, to demand that the FBI cough this information up to them so they can take a look at it, because I believe that FBI Director Comey is covering this up, because I also believe at this point, given the fact that I can't get a response, no one can get a response from them, that the FBI may have been involved in some of this illegal surveillance. In fact, it probably was. So the FBI takes this in from Montgomery and then buries it and does nothing with it, because they're covering up for themselves as well as the other establishment intelligence agencies in Washington, D.C.
And so now they know how much evidence is available that could convict them of illegal spying on American citizens.
Yeah, that's a potential. And, you know, the more that the FBI stonewalls, the more that's a likelihood. So that's why I would urge people to call. This is the Capitol phone number. It's 202-224-3121. That's 202-224-3121. Asked to be put through to Chairman Devin Nunes of the House Intelligence Committee and Senator Richard Burr of North Carolina of the Senate Intelligence Committee, both chairmen, and demand that they do their job or send them emails or do anything, because, you see, these intelligence committees knew or should have known what was going on. And they're not all that excited about getting into what Montgomery has provided to the FBI, because it would show that they sat on this for years. This is all a giant club. And frankly, the likely reason that Nunes is getting into it now with the leaks is because it threatens a Republican president. But if it had not, he probably would put his head in the sand like everybody else has been doing. Montgomery came forward to these intelligence committees for years, before Nunes was the chairman, before Burr was the chairman. I hope they'll be different than the previous ones. He came forward to the Senate Judiciary Committee because the judges were surveyed. Came forward to the House Judiciary Committee because they were surveyed. No one would listen to him. Came forward to Inspector Generals of the Defense Department, CIA, NSA. Nobody would listen to him. They don't want to hear what he has to say, because all this has been going on for a very long time. And frankly, I believe it's a giant cover-up. So that's why the American people need to rise up. Now, as you know, in 2013 and 2014, I got preliminary injunctions against the National Security Agency and Obama and others for this illegal surveillance, but they have not stopped. They don't care about court orders. They think they're above the law, and they're a force even more powerful than the President of the United States. They have the ability to blackmail and coerce. I don't know whether this is the case or not, but Chief Justice Roberts, who Montgomery says was surveyed, harvested by these intelligence agencies, you have to ask the question, why did he flip at the 12th hour on Obamacare? Why do we have Obamacare now, which is such a mess? Was it because they had something on the Chief Justice that he didn't want to go out publicly and they used it? That's the risk here. We're living in an Orwellian state, as Judge Leon, who issued those two preliminary injunctions on our behalf, ruled.
Well, Larry, this is the question I asked about the Chief Justice on this radio program when he made that flip on Obamacare. I said, either he has been bought off or he has been intimidated.
Look, everybody in the world has something they don't want the public to know. Now, Supreme Court justices are supposed to be beyond reproach. They think that they're almost like God. They honestly believe that they were appointed by God. I've dealt with them, believe me. And, you know, who knows what they may have harvested on Roberts that they may have made him aware of. They didn't even necessarily have to say, do this or we'll release it. If he knew that they had it, if the Obama administration had it, and most of this illegal activity occurred during the Obama years. It also started during the Bush years, W. Bush, but it was taken to a much higher level under Obama. And you don't even need to say anything because they know what the consequences are. And that's the risk here, is that these intelligence agencies, the chairman, the others, the agencies have stuff on them too. And in fact, just a few years ago, the CIA illegally hacked the email accounts of, ironically, a Democrat liberal senator, Dianne Feinstein from California. It was illegal. And John Brennan, who was CIA director at the time, when asked under oath if he had hacked the Senate Intelligence Committee emails of Senator Feinstein, who was chairman at the time, lied under oath. Now, nothing happens to him. Nothing happens to Clapper, because these law enforcement agencies know that if they go hard against these agencies, stuff's going to fly out of the files against them. And that's why we are living in this Orwellian state. A friend of mine, David Marconi, a Hollywood writer, very prominent, wrote the movie Enemy of the State. It was about the NSA and the misuse of the NSA. He was a visionary in predicting this. Gene Hackman was the actor. I urge people to rent the movie, because this was completely foreseeable. And we live in a state where the intelligence agencies rule the school. If we had this power, if King George III had this power before the Declaration of Independence was signed, our founding fathers would have never made it to Philadelphia to debate and sign it. They would have been picked up, they would have been arrested and executed before they got there. Their plans would have been revealed. That's how powerful this power is. And it's obviously now being misused. And now it's being trained against President Trump and his team to destroy his presidency. I believe that he was right. I believe that Barack Obama and all the people around, many of the people around him are behind this, and they're orchestrating it, and they still have this deep state. Most of their people are still in government, and they're out to destroy the Trump presidency.
A final question. Barack Obama is on a Polynesian island. Have you considered the possibility that he's avoiding possible arrest?
Well, let's hope he stays there. Let him put on a grass skirt, and let's hope he stays there. But
wouldn't be hard to convince him to wear a skirt.
When he's back in Washington, he's over in Kalorama Mansion. He always criticized the 1%ers. Well, he's living like Donald Trump these days. So he at least has that in common with the president, that he and his people are trying to destroy.
That's true. He was living like that his whole life.
Yeah.
Larry Klayman, thank you so much for being on True News, sir.
God bless you. Thank you for having me.